There are 5 questions every speaker should ask anytime they're preparing a public speech. The questions are, to whom am I speaking? What is my goal in relation to my audience? What resources do I need to achieve my goal? How do I present those resources clearly? And how do I present those resources memorably? In this tutorial, we'll look at the second question. What is my goal in relation to my audience? And we'll see that this goal is achieved by creating 2 statements, a specific purpose statement and a thesis statement. The specific purpose statement tells me what I'm going to do. The thesis statement tells me what I'm going to say. Whenever preparing a specific purpose, we want to think about the general purposes for giving a speech. There are 5 general purposes for giving a speech. To inform. In informative speaking, the speaker seeks to help the audience understand their topic. To instruct. In instructional speaking, the speaker is seeking to help the audience apply their concepts. To persuade. In persuasive speaking, the speaker is seeking to change an attitude, belief, behavior, or policy. To inspire. In inspirational speaking, the speaker assumes that the audience shares a particular value and seeks to rally support and engender support for that value. And finally, to entertain. An entertaining speech is one that provides a diversion for the audience. These general purposes become important as we write a specific purpose statement, because the specific purpose statement will say something along the lines of, my purpose is to inform, instruct, persuade, inspire, or entertain. People often tell me, well, but I have more than one purpose. There's information that goes with persuasion. There's instruction that goes with inspiration. There is persuasion that goes with being entertaining. Yeah, these concepts overlap. But you want to focus on what is your primary purpose. What are you trying to achieve ultimately? Because that will help keep your speech focused and will help you stay on point. If you know going into a situation that your job is really not to persuade, but simply provide information to decision makers so that they can make those decisions, it's helpful to say that at the front end of your preparation, to remind you that you're not there to advise, you're there to inform. So you would say something like, my purpose is to inform, and who is your audience? Maybe it's the board of a nonprofit that you work with, or maybe it's the decision makers of your colleagues, people that you're working with, and you're there to provide a briefing as you go into a group setting where you're going to decide together. But stay focused on what your purpose is. From here on out, I'm going to primarily talk about 2 purposes, to inform and to persuade. And then you will tell who your audience is. You tell about what your topic is. So my purpose is to inform the board of directors about possibilities for using invested funds in service of our organization. Now that we've got a specific purpose written, we're going to think about a thesis statement. A good thesis statement has 3 things. 1, it is independently informative or persuasive. 2, it is audience-oriented or audience-directed. And 3, it is orally deliverable. First, a good thesis statement is independently informative or persuasive, whatever your specific purpose says. It passes that question of, if you remember nothing else, you should remember what? This is the if you remember nothing else, remember test. And that's just what you want to think. If I want my audience to know nothing else, if the only thing they remember from my speech is this, what do you want them to remember? And by the way, some of us are hams, and what we really want our audience to remember are the jokes we tell. But then that's why we go back to that specific purpose. What are you really trying to get done in this speech? So here are some examples. I have a poor example. It says, today we will look at the causes, effects, and treatments of attention deficit disorder. Now this is actually what's called a preview, and people often confuse a thesis statement and a preview. But the preview looks at what I will say in the subpoints of my speech. This is not a good thesis statement. It is not independently informative or persuasive. It doesn't tell me anything new. It tells me what I'm going to talk about. A better version of this would be attention deficit disorder, ADD, can be managed with medication. Or another better example would be several medications are available for people dealing with attention deficit disorder. This third option is really good because it identifies that you're going to talk about additional medications in the body of the speech. A second quality then of a good thesis statement is that it is audience directed. This is a place where the audience and the topic meet. So if our starting point is attention deficit disorder, ADD, can be managed without medication, well, who are we addressing that to? If my audience is a group of adults who are suffering from attention deficit disorder, then we might say something like, adults with attention deficit disorder can adopt lifestyle changes to manage ADD. This puts my audience in with the thesis statement so that they understand who it is I'm talking about. Another example, if my starting point is several medications are available for people dealing with attention deficit disorder, then with my audience, I might say parents of ADD children have important medication decisions to make. The third quality then is that it's orally deliverable. Frequently, people will hear me say, speak to write, don't write to speak. What I see speakers do all over the place is write out a transcript of their speech and then read it to the audience. This is the least effective use of time and often the least effective way to deliver speech. That's because we don't speak the way we write, and we don't write the way we speak. And it's a lot easier to get your fingers to conform to your mouth than it is for you to get your mouth to conform to your fingers. So whenever you're preparing a public speech, you should get up and speak. Speak to the wall, speak to the mirror, speak to a picture of your family. But speak and listen to yourself. And when you say something the way you want it to be heard, write that down. Speak to write. Don't write to speak. And I should clarify, my advice is only pertaining to preparing public speeches. When you're writing an essay, you ought to write to write. Write for the way it should be seen and read, not the way it should be heard. But speak to write. Don't write to speak when you're preparing a public speech. So if our starting point is parents of children with attention deficit disorder have important decisions to make concerning their child's ADD medications, that's a mouthful. We don't want to write all that down. You can't say all that. That's the way it's written, but you want to say it in a more concise way. And so to say the exact same things, I would say, parents of ADD children have important medication decisions to make. Now, I've said everything I said in my starting point, but I've said it in a more compact, orally deliverable way. Another example, adults with attention deficit disorder can adopt lifestyle changes to manage ADD. A more orally deliverable version of this would be, some lifestyle changes can help adults with attention deficit disorder. So now we've seen a good thesis statement is going to be independently informative or persuasive. It's going to say what I want to say in the whole speech. It's going to be audience oriented. It's going to be a place where my topic and my audience meet. And it's going to be orally deliverable. It's going to provide what I need them to hear. So write your specific purpose for every speech. Write a good thesis sentence. You don't necessarily say your specific purpose. In fact, you don't usually say your specific purpose in the delivery of the speech, but you do include that thesis statement, and the best speeches are going to be the ones that are formed entirely around that one single statement, that thesis statement that you want your audience to remember if they remember nothing else.